For those of you who don't know, this is John Crump. John has been training at Carey, which is a Baptist training college. So,
Got a fan club.
Simon's in the back row there. So how long have you been doing that now for?
2 years.
2 years,
Yeah.
yep. So he's training to be a youth pastor, and so he's going to be speaking to us today. Thank you.
Cheers, Keith. Quite excited to be back up here. Second official big boy sermon. Done lots of wee talks. I'm making my way up there. I would like to point out, I feel like Keith kind of stitched me up with this one, because when he gave me the date of when I was preaching, I was fine with it. And then he told me who was preaching the week before, which is Tuck Bunner, who I wouldn't argue with it. He's a far better preacher than I am right now. He's quite good at it. And then now I'm preaching. So thanks for that, Keith. It's all good. Trial by fire. So I can follow it up a celebrity sermon. Let's go with that. Just want to start by sharing a story about myself. This story happened when I was in year 11, so that's about 6 years ago. It involves a blazer and a pair of scissors and $300 out of Mum's pocket. So what happened was, year 11 maths, me and 3 other of my mates are in this class, and we're all sitting in the back 4 seats because that's where the cool kids sit. One maths lesson, we're all a bit boisterous, and I don't know what happened, but it resulted in a bit of like funny messing with someone else, and I ended up having all my math stuff stolen by the guy sitting next to me, which, was fair enough. It's like, I'll do it to him later on and that kind of stuff. Except, for whatever reason, the maths teacher was in a bit of a mood and came storming up. He's like, "Where's all your stuff? Why haven't you got it out yet?" I was like, "Oh, mister, he took it all." And he's like, "Well, that's not good enough. Get it out or you'll be withdrawn when I come back here." So I was feeling a lot of pressure from a maths teacher. And this guy, he just took the joke a wee bit too far and he just wasn't giving it back. I happened to have a pair of my fabric scissors, though, still with me. And I knew that he was wearing a blazer that he really cared about. So in my kind of 16-year-old brain, I was like, I'll threaten to cut this guy's blazer and then he'll give me the stuff back. So I held the scissors up to the blazer and I was like, if you don't give me the stuff back, I'm going to cut your blazer. He didn't give it back, and then I cut his blazer. Looking back, not the smartest choice, but anyway, that's what happened. He then gave me all my stuff back, didn't talk to me for the rest of the lesson. At one stage he went out and he was on the phone. Someone's like, "Oh, he's ringing his mum," and I was like, "Yeah, whatever." No, he was. Later on in the day, I got called in to Mr. Pannett's office, who kind of deals with behaviour stuff at school, and he informed me that he had a call from this guy's mum, and she was demanding that I buy a new blazer. If you haven't bought a blazer, they're about $300, and I kind of had to. So I had to go home and tell Mum, like, "Hey, so something happened at school." Hey, oh, you already? Oh, okay, no, never mind. Okay, she'd already had a call. I didn't have $300, so Mum had to buy the blazer, and I then had to proceed to pay her back over the holidays. What really made it annoying is I had my first kind of holiday job, made $150 babysitting. It was the most cash I'd ever had on me at one time, straight to Mum. And I'll be honest, I'm still annoyed about it. We got the blazer. The nick was literally about this big, kind of on the side bit. Mum couldn't find it until I pointed it out, and I think it cost about $30 to take to McCallum's and repair. So the story does have a purpose. Apart from being a funny story for everyone else, there is a purpose to it, and I will come back to it later on. And while I was preparing for this sermon, I'm doing the passage first. It's up there. So it is. I realised that the one other sermon I've done starts exactly the same as this sermon here. And the first verse is, the end of all things is near. Now, I didn't do that on purpose. I'm not just trying to find all the verses about doom and gloom and everything ending. That's just kind of what happened. So it got me thinking, what are the chances that two verses that I pick start the same way? And so I decided to figure it out. I Googled it. And, how many times does the Bible talk about Jesus returning or the end times, that kind of stuff? So I got a number. It's a big number. I'll hand out a chocolate to anyone that can guess what the number is. Way more than 137. Way more than that. How much? Not quite that much. No, a wee bit below that. It is in the thousands. Yes? You're really close, nearly there. Bit more. Add about another 100 and you're there. 1,845. I'll give you that, Sonny. So almost 2,000 times throughout the whole Bible. 23 out of 27 of the New Testament books talk about it. The last book of the Bible basically is all about this. So it's obviously quite an important event. Now, when talking about this, it can kind of seem either good news or bad news, kind of depending on the way you look at it. On the good side, Peter's telling us that actually everything's coming to an end. At some stage, God will return, and all the bad stuff that is happening will end. So no more sickness, no more death, no more sadness, no more hurt. The bad stuff you're going through now won't be happening when he comes back. That'll all be over. And for the people that Peter was writing to, this was a huge encouragement. These people were being prosecuted left, right and centre, verbally, physically, socially. They were pretty outcast and they were having a bit of a rough time. Now the downside of this is Peter isn't just talking about God coming back. He's talking about us personally as well. At some stage, we will die. Which is pretty sobering. When you think about it. And it can be a really scary and confronting thought for a lot of people. I'll just go to the next slide real quickly. There we go. Great movie. Yes, Jesus is coming. Look busy. I'll just add that in. So Peter goes on to just give us a wee bit of comfort and a wee bit of warning. He goes on to say, be serious and discipline yourself for the sake of your prayer. Now, when people were kind of confronted with their own mortality, it can kind of affect how they do decision making. Does anyone remember like 2012 in YOLO, like hashtag YOLO or hashtag YOLO swag? It was a bit of a thing where essentially people, it's like carpe diem, like seize the day, except because it's 2012, people my age at the time just took it really far and like use it as an excuse to do anything stupid. I remember a guy in the canteen picked up an apple, threw it at a wall, split it everywhere, and I was like, "Why did you do that?" He's like, "'Cause YOLO. It stands for you only live once." And so people, have used it to do a lot of dumb stuff. And that's what Peter's trying to warn us not to do. Because if we all die, a lot of people think, what does it matter if we're all going to die anyway? Why don't we just do whatever we want? And Peter's like, don't do that. That's the opposite of what we want. Peter wants us to take life seriously and remember to keep what is important in mind. Because once we start to think about all that other stuff, once we start to go, oh, well, if we're only here once, we need like a really good job, and we need a lot of money to have a good house to live our life comfortably, that gets in the way of actually what's really important, which is our relationship with God. Because as soon as we start chasing other stuff, our first thing to go is our relationship with God. We stop, we get busy, and we say, oh, no, we don't have time to pray. Or we get really busy, and then it's like, oh, well, I'll just go to church next week because I just need to do something this week. We need to keep what's really important in mind, which is their relationship with God. And the reason that we need a really good relationship with God is because of what Peter tells us next. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers a multitude of sins. Now, that's a pretty big claim, like above all. So if think of anything, love is above that. And not just liking or tolerating or giving someone a thumbs up, love. Which, again, pretty intense, big emotion. And let's be real, it's not easy. Some people, you just want to hit in the face whenever you see them. I don't want to keep going on it. Like, I saw this guy that I cut the blazer like a year, I think last year or the year before. Hadn't seen him like literally since then. We weren't in any classes since year 11, and I just got really angry looking at him. And I was like, man, like I really don't like you. He was a nice guy, like he was a nice guy, but just this one thing, I was like, oh. Sorry. Yes, loving someone is a lot easier said than done, but actually it is really important because love covers over a multitude of sins. Now, I'd argue that love actually stops us doing that stupid stuff in the first place. If I'd shown love to this guy, I would have been able to save myself a lot of time and money and a lot of annoyance over the years. I wouldn't probably have cut his blazer. Another thing is, when we have that love in a relationship, it can alter how that event plays out. So say this was Jeremy, and I cut Jeremy's puffer jacket. Obviously, we have a good relationship. Yes, the outcome would still probably be the same. I would have to buy him a new puffer jacket, and then, obviously pay that off and work it out. And things would be weird for a while. But we'd get over it. We'd get past that. At some stage, he would, I hope he would, stop hitting me over the head with it. Yes, he'd probably make fun of me for countless years to come, keep bringing it up. But actually, it wouldn't affect our relationship. I wouldn't still be 6 years down the line looking at Jeremy going, man, he makes me really mad. So love can help heal those relationships when the bad stuff happens. And the final thing that love is important, and we have to remember, is that actually we had the greatest love first. Which is God's love. So God's love, which can cover over our sins, which when we pass on and we get to Him, that love can help us actually keep living with Him and actually cover over our own transgressions. Now, once we have that love down packed, and once we have that love kind of sorted for other people, it can help us begin to interact well with other people. Peter goes on to tell us to offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Now, hospitality is really important. It's kind of the glue that holds us all together. Now, the aftermath of me cutting this kid's blazer was essentially part of our friendship group fell apart because it kind of just got divided into two camps. Some of us were Team Jono, some of us were Team that guy, kind of, oh, you shouldn't have cut his blazer, that was really stupid, man, Jono, you're just mean. And then other people were like, nah, it's fair enough, they'd stolen all his stuff, Jono told him, and that kind of stuff. And we honestly just became really nasty to each other. We stopped, when we were hanging out with each other, we stopped doing anything nice for anyone, we stopped handing food around, that kind of stuff. And it just kind of led to a really nasty space where no one wanted to do anything nice for each other. And the group just fell apart. Because nothing can be sustained if we don't have hospitality. No one wants to work at a job where your boss is really mean, doesn't do anything nice. Businesses, can't function if people don't spend time together and get to know each other. You have churches, I guess, as a collective group, we wouldn't have actually started if no one did hospitality. Back in Peter's day when a preacher came to town, he needed somewhere to stay. He needed somewhere to, eat food, to actually talk to people, to actually kickstart a church in that area. And once that church was started, those people had to be hospitable to the new people that came in. Otherwise, they wouldn't actually want to join, and kind of Christianity would be over before it started. And we did see a wee bit of this happen kind of over COVID. Some churches got hit really hard, and and got really divided amongst some mandates and that kind of stuff. And some people from difference of opinion just stop, be nice to each other. And I know of a couple churches of people that I'm studying with that nearly came to the point where essentially they were about to split. Thankfully, they managed to resolve it and started to bring hospitality back into their church to people. And this is really important because it can honestly make or break church growth. Any new person coming in, if there's no hospitality, they're not going to hang around. If you come into a church and no one says hi to you, no one invites you around, no one actually takes time to get to know you, no one is going to want to stay around at that church. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to throw a lunch every week, although I do love a good potluck. It could be as simple as just asking someone how their day was, or taking the time to listen to someone's story even though you're not interested, or just catching up with someone for coffee during the week. It's about creating a space where someone feels safe and welcome and acknowledged. So once we're all kind of in that same place, once the hospitality happens, Peter goes on to tell us that each of us should use whatever gifts we have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. Now, God has given everyone different skills and abilities, which we are told to use to serve others. God didn't give us these gifts so we could advance our own cause, to get further ahead in life than other people, or to drag people down. He gave these gifts to serve others. If anyone in the worship team decided just to keep their talents for themselves, we'd all be singing Gregorian chants during church. If Keith decided to keep his pastoral skills to himself, we'd be out of here by 10:30. But also, we wouldn't have anyone cultivating the spiritual health of this church, and things could get really messy. As Christians, we are God's representation in the world, and He has equipped us to be that representation. Not just to ourselves, not just to help the people sitting to your left and right, but actually to help everyone that you come into contact with. Now, I definitely didn't use my gifts to serve this guy that I cut the blazer, and things may have ended up differently. We may have been able to repair that relationship, but actually that didn't happen. Now, taking your gifts and going into a space could be as simple as having a house free to host an event, or just having the patience to listen to someone through a hard time. I think we tend to get a wee bit not confused, but tend to focus on certain gifts. Whenever we talk about gifts, it always goes to like people that can speak in tongues, or people that can heal through prayer, which are really cool. But actually, they're not the only gifts. I'd encourage you to, if you don't know what gifts you've been given from God, I'd encourage you to talk to someone that you know, just to kind of figure out what those gifts could be, and then how you could use them. It took me about 5 years of drumming before I would have actually said that drumming is a gift I have. Now, I know people in New Zealand don't really like to talk themselves up, but actually that's something that I would say I have a gift in, is drumming, and so I've used that here. So I would really encourage you to find your gifts and own your gifts once you've found out what they are. Our final instruction that Peter gives us in verse 11 is, if anyone speaks, they should do so as one who speaks the very words of God. If anyone serves, they should do so with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. There's a lot in that sentence, but most of what we do in church can kind of be whittled down to two categories, speaking and serving. If you try and think of anything in church, I could probably put it into those two categories. And now, whether we realize it or not, actually we do those quite often, but we need to make sure that we're doing it right. If Keith got up here and started preaching, now I've always wondered about this, if he got up and started preaching absolute nonsense, would anyone stop him? I've always because we we give the pastor a lot of power. I mean, I'm up here for kind of 15, 20 minutes, and I could say whatever because I've got a microphone. You're all going to hear it. If I decided to say something that was totally off topic from the Bible, but pass it off as biblical, I could do some serious damage. Yeah, well that's what I figured. But then if Keith got up, who's going to stop Keith? I kind of just assumed one of the elders would maybe say something, or Jeremy. But then I know sometimes we feel awkward, or can we tell the pastor that's wrong? But yeah, Keith could really do some damage if he decided to. But there we go. We got a contingency plan. Yeah. So every time Keith's up here, he's making sure that what he is saying isn't coming from him or his own personal gain. It's coming through God. We've kind of seen this play out badly. Some of you have been following Arise Church. They're telling uni students that they have to give their student loans to the church because that's God's will. Then an intern's role is to scrub cars and babysit whenever they're needed, which is, hey? It's a good thing I'm preaching against that, Keith. No, fair enough. Hey? So that's an example of people that have used their position to speak for themselves rather than God, and we've seen the damage that it's done. As Christians, we're here to live lives that point towards God. And when stuff like that happens with Arise, it can wreck it for everyone. Conversations that I've had at school, when they find out that I'm a Christian, they're all like, oh, so you guys I'm just trying to think of an example. I was talking to one kid, and he's kind of talking about how he doesn't like Christians, and I was like, why not? He's like, oh, because all they do is tell you you're doing everything wrong and all that kind of stuff. And then I heard Dad talking about some church up in Auckland and said church is a bunch of hypocrites and that kind of stuff. So that's already, there's a lot of hurt and damage that's been done by this, and trying to have a conversation with this kid when he had kind of already made up his mind about Christians, it became really hard. It's trying to backtrack before you can kind of take those steps forward. We need to make sure that what we are saying and what we are doing reflects God. Now, if all this kind of seems really daunting, and you're not sure how you can be hospitable or how to love others or how to use your gifts, that's all right, because actually God has given us a bit of a step-by-step guide of how to do that. He sent Jesus. He was the perfect example of how to be a Christian, of how to live a life that points towards God. So be serious and discipline yourself for the sake of your prayer. Jesus took time out of his day to connect with God. It's as easy as that. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers a multitude of sins. Each person Jesus met, he connected with on a personal level, and he saw past their faults. Let's try and do that. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Jesus created spaces where people felt welcome, where people felt safe, even though the rest of society looked down on them and shunned them. So I'd ask you to try and make someone feel welcome this week. Each of you should use whatever gifts you receive to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. Jesus knew that his power had come from God, and he used it to help others. I could stand here all day listing off examples. He healed people. He forgave people of their sins. He brought communities together. So this week, try and use something that you have, whether it's something material. You might just have an extra $10 lying around, or you might have a car and you know of someone in your work that may be struggling to get somewhere this week, or it may be something immaterial. You may be good at listening to people. You may be good at giving advice. So try and use those gifts to help someone. And Peter finishes with a prayer at the end of his verse. And so, yeah, I'll just finish with his prayer, which I really like. So let's pray. To God be the glory and the power forever and ever. God, help us to remember where our strength and our giftings come from. Help us to live our lives so that our lives may point to you for other people. Help us go out into this week and look for opportunities to be hospitable, to love each other, and to speak on your behalf. Amen.